All right, so are you ready? Today, we are diving deep into birthright citizenship in the U.S.
Ooh, that's a hot topic.
It is, and it's been making headlines a lot lately, especially with some of the things that President-elect Trump has been saying.
Right.
So we're going to be looking at what it is, why it's so controversial, and can Trump actually change it?
Interesting.
Our guide for this exploration is going to be this article from Al Jazeera.
Okay.
And it was published December 9th, 2024, and it really lays out all the details of what's going on.
I'm excited to hear about this because what I find really interesting about this whole issue is it's about more than just laws.
Yeah,
It really gets into the question of like what it means to be American.
totally.
It touches on history and the Constitution, immigration, and even global perspectives on citizenship.
It's a much bigger concept than I initially realized.
It is.
So to kick things off, can you give us like a simple explanation of what birthright citizenship actually means?
Sure. So birthright citizenship basically means that if you're born within the borders of the United States, you automatically become a U.S. citizen.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what your parents' immigration status is. They could be undocumented immigrants, tourist students, anyone.
Oh, wow.
As long as you were born on U.S. soil, you're a citizen.
So location, location, location.
Exactly.
You could be born in a hospital or a car, even on a plane flying over U.S. airspace, and you'd be a U.S. citizen.
That's right.
That's pretty wild when you think about it.
It is. And the legal basis for this is rooted in the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution.
Ah, the 14th Amendment. It's
Yeah.
one of those things you always hear about, but maybe you don't totally understand.
Right.
Can you break that down for me a little bit?
Absolutely. So the 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868, just after the Civil War.
Yeah.
And it was primarily designed to ensure that newly freed slaves would be recognized as citizens and have equal protection under the law. And there's a specific clause in the amendment that's super relevant here. It states that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside.
So that makes sense in the context of, post-Civil War America ensuring those rights.
Yes.
But what does that phrase, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, really mean?
Yeah,
It sounds like that's where the debate gets a little tricky.
you're absolutely right. That phrase is at the heart of the controversy. It essentially means anyone born within U.S. borders who is subject to U.S. laws, regardless of their parent's status, is automatically a citizen.
Interesting. So this amendment with that very specific wording, has been the foundation of birthright citizenship for over 150 years now.
Right.
But President-elect Trump has repeatedly stated his intention to end birthright citizenship.
Does.
He even went so far as to say, yeah, absolutely, when asked about it on Meet the Press. He seems pretty determined. So how does he plan to actually change something that's been part of the Constitution for so long?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? Trump has suggested he could end birthright citizenship with an executive order, which is basically a directive from the president.
Wait, can you really do that? Just sign a paper and change the Constitution? It can't be that easy.
It's definitely not that simple.
Hmm.
The Constitution outlines specific ways it can be amended, and a presidential order isn't one of them.
Okay.
There are two main routes to amending the Constitution.
Okay.
First, you need a supermajority vote in both houses of Congress.
Okay.
That's 2/3 of both the Senate and the House of Representatives, and then 3/4 of the states have to ratify it.
Okay.
The second way is through a constitutional convention,
Okay.
where 2/3 of the states call for a convention to propose amendments.
Right.
That road has actually never happened in U.S. history.
So changing the Constitution is a huge undertaking.
It is.
Requiring a ton of agreement from both Congress and the states, it's not something that can just happen overnight.
Right.
And the Al Jazeera article pointed out that the current makeup of Congress makes it even less likely.
Right.
So the Democrats have 47 seats in the Senate and 215 in the House, while the Republicans have 53 and 220 respectively.
Right.
Those numbers don't scream supermajority to me.
Exactly. Amending the Constitution is designed to be a difficult process. It requires broad consensus
Okay.
and ensures that any changes reflect a substantial national agreement.
Yeah.
And this isn't just some recent interpretation either. Back in 2018, even Paul Ryan, who was Speaker of the House at the time, dismissed Trump's claims about ending birthright citizenship with an executive order.
Wow.
He stated that it cannot be done with an executive order
Wow.
and emphasized that amending the Constitution is a long and complicated process.
It sounds like Trump is facing a pretty big uphill battle here.
Yeah.
The Al Jazeera article even quoted Bruce Fein, a constitutional law expert who didn't mince words, calling Trump constitutionally illiterate for suggesting he could change birthright citizenship with an executive order.
Wow, strong words.
So it sounds like a large number of legal experts really disagree with Trump's interpretation of his powers.
They do.
And they argue that trying to bypass the 14th Amendment with an executive order would be immediately challenged in court.
Most likely.
Okay, so let's say, hypothetically, that somehow Trump does manage to push this forward.
Okay.
Despite all the legal hurdles, what would the consequences be if birthright citizenship were actually eliminated?
Well, first of all, it would create a logistical nightmare.
Oh, really?
The Al Jazeera article really highlighted that point. If birthright citizenship ended, every U.S.-born citizen would need new ways to prove their citizenship.
Yeah.
Imagine the mountain of paperwork, the bureaucracy, the potential for errors and even fraud. It would be total chaos.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. We kind of take it for granted that, our birth certificate is enough.
Right.
But if it were suddenly not, it would completely change how citizenship is established and verified.
Exactly. And it goes beyond the bureaucratic hurdles.
Oh,
Think about the impact on families.
yeah.
This change could potentially separate parents from their U.S.-born children, particularly those with mixed immigration statuses.
Yeah.
It seems to contradict Trump's stated goal of keeping families together.
That's a really important point. It creates a real human cost to this policy change.
It does.
And the Al Jazeera article cited some pretty alarming projections research from the Migration Policy Institute in Pennsylvania State University.
Oh,
Indicated that eliminating birthright citizenship for children with two undocumented immigrant parents could add 4.7 million people to the undocumented population by 2050.
wow, that's huge.
That's a massive increase.
Absolutely. The potential ramifications are huge.
Yeah.
And it's crucial to remember that this whole idea that the U.S. is some outlier with birthright citizenship is simply not true.
Yeah, I remember Trump claiming during that Meet the Press interview that the U.S. is the only country with birthright citizenship,
Right.
which just isn't accurate.
It's completely false. Over 30 countries around the world have some form of birthright citizenship,
Oh, wow.
including many democratic nations like Canada,
Yeah.
Brazil, Mexico, and even Argentina.
So it's not this radical, unique concept. It's actually a fairly common approach to citizenship globally.
You're right, and it raises some interesting questions about how different countries define belonging and what it means to be a citizen.
Yeah?
There are several ways countries grant citizenship besides birthright. There's citizenship by descent, where a child's citizenship is based on their parents' nationality, regardless of where they're born.
Right. And then there's naturalization, where someone who has lived in a country for a specific amount of time and meeting certain requirements can apply to become a citizen.
Yes, and we can't forget about citizenship through marriage,
Right.
where marrying a citizen of a country can grant you citizenship.
And then there's dual citizenship, where a person can hold citizenship in two countries simultaneously.
Exactly.
That's right. I'm actually a dual citizen myself.
Interesting. There's also citizenship by investment, offered by some countries, though not the U.S.
Uh-huh.
This allows individuals to gain citizenship by making a substantial investment in the country,
Okay.
like buying property. Turkey, for example, has a program like this where you need to invest at least $400,000 in property to be eligible for citizenship.
Wow. So there's a whole spectrum of approaches to citizenship out there.
Absolutely, and it's really important to understand that broader context when considering the debate over birthright citizenship in the U.S.
Okay, I'm definitely getting a clearer picture now.
Good.
We've covered a lot of ground already, but I want to make sure I'm understanding everything correctly.
Right.
So to recap what we've learned so far,
Okay.
birthright citizenship in the U.S. is deeply rooted in the 14th Amendment. And amending the Constitution to change that would be incredibly difficult, especially with the current political landscape.
Right.
And even if President-elect Trump tries to go around the Constitution with an executive order, it will likely face legal challenges and end up in court.
Most likely.
And the potential consequences of ending birthright citizenship are huge. Everything from major logistical issues with proving citizenship to a significant increase in the undocumented population, not to mention the impact on families who could be separated.
Absolutely.
Wow, you've really laid out the complexities and potential issues surrounding this topic.
Yes.
I'm starting to wonder why President-elect Trump is pushing this agenda so hard when it seems so unlikely to succeed.
It's a good question.
What are the political and social implications at play here, even if his efforts ultimately fail?
That's a great question, and it's something worth considering. Why bring up such a divisive issue if it seems doomed to fail? We'll delve into those questions and more as we continue this deep dive in part 2.
Stay tuned.
It's fascinating to think about why this debate is resurfacing now, especially with Trump back in the political spotlight.
Yeah, it's been on my mind too. Like, if his chances of actually changing the Constitution are so slim,
Right.
what's the motivation behind bringing this up again?
Well, if we zoom out and look at the bigger picture, this move could be part of a larger strategy.
Okay.
Trump's base tends to have very strong opinions on immigration.
Hmm.
So by reigniting this issue, he might be aiming to energize his supporters
Okay.
and frame the immigration debate in a way that benefits him politically.
Yeah, okay.
Even if it's a symbolic gesture, it gets people talking.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like he's throwing a red meat issue to his base,
Yep.
even if it's not a realistic policy goal that he can actually achieve.
Exactly. It's a way to signal his stance on immigration and tap into, anxieties within a certain segment of the population.
And by doing so, he keeps the conversation focused on an issue that he believes he can win on,
Right.
even if he can't achieve the specific policy outcome.
Precisely.
Hmm.
It's a way to set the agenda and control the narrative, even if the practical implications are limited.
Okay, so we've talked about the legal and political angles of birthright citizenship,
Right.
but I think it's also important to step back and consider the bigger social and philosophical implications of this debate.
Absolutely.
What are the underlying values at play here?
Yeah, I completely agree. At its core, this debate is about belonging and identity.
Okay.
It's about who belongs in America and what it means to be American.
And it raises the question of whether citizenship should be solely based on birthplace,
Right.
or if other factors should be considered, like your parents' immigration status.
Exactly. And it touches on issues of equality, fairness, and the idea of America as a nation built on immigration.
It's almost like there are two competing visions of America kind of clashing here.
Yeah.
One that's more inclusive and welcomes newcomers,
Right.
and another that's more focused on maintaining a specific cultural or ethnic homogeneity.
You hit the nail on the head. These two visions have been in tension throughout American history.
In the Al Jazeera article, made me think about how birthright citizenship has been used to both expand and restrict rights
It's true.
throughout our history, which is pretty interesting.
It is.
So can you give me an example? How has it been used to restrict rights?
We'll take the 14th Amendment itself.
Okay.
It was passed after the Civil War to guarantee citizenship for newly freed slaves, a group that had been systematically denied basic rights.
Okay.
In that context, birthright citizenship was a tool for inclusion and equality.
So in that case, it expanded the definition of who could be considered an American citizen.
Exactly. But historically, there have also been attempts to use birthright citizenship in a more restrictive way,
Oh, really?
particularly during periods of anti-immigrant sentiment.
Like what kind of attempt?
Well, for example, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, there was a movement to exclude Chinese immigrants and their U.S.-born children from citizenship.
Wow, I didn't realize that. So even though the 14th Amendment was meant to be inclusive, its interpretation hasn't always been so straightforward.
Right.
There have been times when it's been used in a much narrower and more exclusionary way.
Precisely. And I think that historical tension is still very much alive in the current debate over birthright citizenship.
It's a good reminder that, these legal and political battles often reflect deeper social and cultural anxieties.
Absolutely. And those anxieties often stem from fear of the other, fear of change,
Okay.
and fear of losing control over what it means to be American.
That's a powerful insight that, the debate over birthright citizenship isn't just about legal technicalities.
Right.
It's about our fundamental values and the kind of society we want to create.
It's also crucial to acknowledge the emotional weight of this issue, especially for those who might be directly impacted
Yeah.
by any changes to birthright citizenship. Imagine the fear and uncertainty that families with mixed immigration statuses must be feeling right now.
It's heartbreaking to think about. It's one thing to debate this, in the abstract.
Yeah.
But it's another thing entirely to consider the real-life consequences
Yeah.
for individuals and families.
And we can't forget about the children who would be caught in the middle of this.
Right.
Children born in the U.S. who might suddenly be in legal limbo, facing the possibility of being separated from their families or even deported to countries they've never known.
That's a devastating thought. It really highlights the human cost of these policy debates.
And it's crucial to remember that these aren't just hypothetical scenarios.
Right.
These are real people, real lives that would be deeply affected by any changes to birthright citizenship.
Okay, so we've talked about the legal complexities, the political motivations,
Yeah.
the broader social and philosophical implications.
Yes.
But what can our listeners do if they want to engage with this issue in a meaningful way?
Hmm.
It feels so big and overwhelming. Where do you even start?
Well, I think the first step is simple, stay informed. Read articles from reliable sources, listen to different perspectives,
Okay.
and try to understand the nuances of this debate.
Okay.
Don't just rely on sound bites or social media posts for your information. Dig deeper and engage with the complexities.
That makes sense. But beyond just staying informed, how can people actually get involved in the conversation and maybe even make a difference?
There are many ways to get involved. You can contact your elected officials and share your views on birthright citizenship. You can support organizations that are working to protect the rights of immigrants and advocate for policies that align with your values.
Okay.
You can also engage in respectful dialogue with people who hold different viewpoints.
So it's about being informed, taking action, and having those sometimes difficult conversations.
Exactly. And remember, this isn't just an abstract legal debate. It has real-world consequences for real people.
Yeah.
Your voice and your actions can make a difference.
This has been incredibly insightful. You've really helped me understand the depth and complexity of this issue.
Right.
So as we move into the final part of our deep dive, I'm curious to explore. So as we're wrapping up this deep dive into birthright citizenship, it's remarkable how this one issue connects to so many
It really is.
fundamental aspects of what it means to be American and this ongoing dialogue about who we are as a nation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a microcosm of larger debates about immigration, inclusivity, national identity, and what citizenship means in our globalized world.
It almost feels like this issue is a stress test
It is.
for our national values.
That's a great way to put it.
Right.
Our response to this challenge, both individually and collectively, reveals a lot about our priorities and our commitment
Yeah.
to the principles at the heart of our democracy.
And it compels us to confront some uncomfortable truths
Right.
about our past and how those historical tensions continue to shape our present.
Absolutely. Thinking back to the Al Jazeera article,
Yeah.
the contrast between Trump's claim that the U.S. is the only country with birthright citizenship
Right.
and the reality that it's a principle embraced by many nations really stood out to me.
Yeah, it highlights how rhetoric and reality can often clash,
They do.
especially in these emotionally charged political debates.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder to be critical of the information we consume,
Right.
to question assumptions, and to seek out diverse perspectives.
Yes, don't just accept things at face value,
Right.
especially when they come from sources pushing a specific agenda.
So it's about being informed, engaged, and willing to challenge our own preconceptions.
Exactly. And it's also about recognizing how interconnected these issues are.
Okay.
We can't discuss birthright citizenship without also considering immigration policy, economic inequality, racial justice, and the global context.
It's about seeing the bigger picture
It is.
and understanding how these seemingly separate issues are actually all intertwined.
Precisely. And recognizing that our choices and actions have consequences.
Yeah.
Not just for ourselves,
Right.
but for generations to come. The decisions we make today about birthright citizenship, immigration, and inclusivity will shape the society we create
Why
for
don't
our children and grandchildren.
That brings up an interesting point. It's about taking a long-term view
Right.
and recognizing the responsibility we have to create a just and equitable society for everyone.
You put it perfectly, and it underscores that this debate isn't simply about legal technicalities or political maneuvering.
Right.
It's about our shared humanity, our commitment to human rights, and our aspirations for a more inclusive and compassionate world.
You've given us a lot to think about. We've explored the challenges and the complexities of birthright citizenship.
Yes.
But I'm curious about the opportunities this debate might present.
Right.
Could this be a chance to have a more honest and nuanced conversation about immigration in America? Could it even be a catalyst for positive change, even if it's messy and uncomfortable at times? What are your thoughts?
That's a crucial question we should all be asking ourselves and engaging with as a society. Can we use this tension and uncertainty to bridge divides,
Right.
find common ground, and build a more inclusive and just future? There's no easy answer, but I believe open dialogue, empathy, and a willingness to listen to each other
Right.
are essential starting points.
Those are powerful words to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the complexities of birthright citizenship. We encourage you to continue exploring this issue, engage in thoughtful conversations, and use your voice to advocate for the kind of America you believe in.